Welcome to Future Self Dreaming. My name is Carlos Kukulkan. Today I want to talk about the importance of developing a relationship with your inner child in the process of returning to your original state of innocence and curiosity. It can be very challenging and enormously painful coming to terms with our own traumatic life experiences and the realization that as a result of these you may have developed a poor sense of self-worth and find yourself looking for love in painful relationships whilst continually experiencing themes of abandonment, rejection, punishment, criticism. It can be an arduous process to work through this and is ultimately reliant on the development of an ongoing relationship with your inner child that won't be healed simply by reading a few books alone, taking a weekend workshop, or a handful of counselling sessions. It takes a sincere dedication and an ongoing commitment to this relationship with your inner self and valuing this element of the equation in the overall importance of your health, self-care and well-being. In this presentation, I'm going to introduce the concept of attachment models, and in future presentations we can explore what happens when symptoms of trauma that manifest within these attachment models go left unchecked, potentially developing into disorders such as codependence and traits of narcissistic personality disorder. The concept of attachment models was developed out of the pioneering work of John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. Bowlby recognized through his observations of animals that during infancy there's a period of imprinting in the offspring where an attachment bond is developed with a primary caregiver. Mary Ainsworth discovered through observations made in her strange situation experiment that children use the primary caregiver as a secure base from which to go out into the world and learn through curious exploration and playful interaction with their surroundings. If there's a surprise, a threat, or a novel encounter within that environment, the child is able to check in with the person who is their secure base and determine via their facial expression, body language, and vocal tonality whether that encounter is okay. And if the child does not feel safe, they need to return to the caregiver who provides that safe, secure base and the reassurance to them that they are safe, having been prompted by the infant's signals of distress. So in attachment theory, attachment is defined as a biological instinct in which proximity to the attachment figure is sought when the child senses or perceives threat or discomfort. Attachment behavior anticipates a response by the attachment figure which will remove the threat or the discomfort. Now, such bonds may be reciprocal between two adults, but between a child and a caregiver, these bonds are based on the child's need for safety, security, and protection, which are paramount throughout infancy and childhood. Attachment models identify how we will relate and respond to others within our intimate adult relationships. They develop out of the parenting styles that we receive from our primary caregivers during childhood, based upon how responsive these caregivers were to our physical and emotional needs. The simplest models of attachment identify that there are three primary styles, and they describe these as secure, anxious, and avoidant, with a fourth sometimes being referred to as disorganized. Secure attachment occurs when a child feels that they can rely on the caregivers to attend to their needs of proximity, emotional support and protection. It is considered to be the most advantageous style of attachment. The anxious attachment occurs when the infant feels separation anxiety when separated from the caregiver and doesn't feel reassured when the caregiver returns to the infant. The avoidant attachment model occurs when an infant avoids their parents, becoming self-reliant, potentially due to experiences of distress caused by the caregiver. And disorganized attachment occurs when there is a complete lack of attachment behavior. Attachments between infants and caregivers form even if the caregiver is not sensitive and responsive in social interactions with them. This has important implications as infants cannot exit unpredictable or insensitive caregiver relationships, and instead they must manage themselves as best they can in these relationships. Anxiety is the anticipation of fear of being cut off from the attachment figure. If the figure is unavailable or unresponsive, separation distress occurs. In infants, physical separation can cause anxiety and anger, followed by sadness and despair. So although it may be hypothesized that almost everybody in life initially has the capacity for empathizing with others, there is evidence to suggest that the development of empathy is largely a learned skill that results from the role modeling of responsiveness or lack thereof by the primary caregivers. If the infant witnesses others respond to itself through mirroring facial expressions, vocal tonality, and body language, mirror neurons within the brain develop that then form the capacity for empathizing with others who may express similar body language. This period throughout younger years assists us to learn to emotionally self-regulate through the assistance of another person in the process of emotional co-regulation. There is a major need for the child to be seen, witnessed, and provided attention by another to provide this emotional co-regulation. Of course, the ideal scenario would be that the parent provides a good enough, safe, secure, and responsive relationship whereby the child can develop a secure attachment model. However, many young people experience their caregivers as being hostile, neglectful, unresponsive, inconsistent, all of which leads to the formation of the anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment models. Essentially, attachment models develop from learning whether relationships are safe or threatening, and whether other people can be trusted and relied upon to be empathic and responsive to your needs, or whether they are neglectful, abusive, self-centered, and unresponsive. Although these styles of attachment are developed in our formative years, they are carried into adulthood and influence the way we interact with others in our intimate adult relationships. We will generally find ourselves repeatedly looping through the attachment patterns formed in childhood and in our adult relationships. Sometimes it might be easier to identify somebody else's pattern of behavior in adult relationships than it is to recognize and see our own. Often it's not until a personal point of crisis that a person seeks help through therapy, when they can then begin to become aware of their own attachment disorders that are caused by the maps and models of relational reality that have been developed in earlier life that are no longer serving them in these adult relationships. It is at this time when the assistance of therapists can provide the emotional support that was not accessible throughout earlier life, assisting the personal growth of the client to develop a more secure attachment style. As mentioned, these attachment models are brought into our adult relating, particularly in intimate relationships, and it is often an area where people begin to become aware of their own conditioned responses and dysfunctional patterns of behavior in these relational dynamics. Understanding the effects of each attachment model can be invaluable in the process of self-reflection and in recognizing your own model of attachment. A book that can help to identify and understand your attachment model is this one, titled Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. So being able to recognize when your attachment model becomes activated or you become emotionally triggered within intimate relationships, we can learn to heed the red flags and that would otherwise result in the abandonment of your relationship with the inner child. That is essential. Many people develop behavioral patterns that abdicate responsibility for their relationship with their inner child, and as a result, unconsciously put this very vulnerable aspect of themselves in the hands of others who they are relating with, who may repeatedly re-victimize the person, resulting in the triggering of emotional flashbacks to childhood, states of helplessness. So when triggered in such a manner, the inner child needs the most attention. One of the keys to developing or the development of a healthier, more secure form of adult relational attachment is developing a solid relationship with the inner child, and in so doing, beginning to repattern these previously dysfunctional emotional, cognitive, and behavioral responses. There are books such as Taming Your Outer Child by Susan Anderson and Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication that have given me a great appreciation for the concept that all behavior makes perfect sense when we understand that feelings are the energy that drive these outer behaviors in an attempt to communicate to others our inner needs. So we all have core needs. They are fundamental to our ability to self-actualize, as identified in Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Without basic needs of safety and security firstly being established within the pyramid of needs, our further development becomes stunted. One of the major lessons that I have taken away from the wisdom of one of my personal therapists was emphasizing the necessity of the relationship with the inner child to have the quality of a felt sense experience. So this point highlighted to me that the relationship with the self cannot simply be a cognitive or intellectual experience. The inner child is a feeling child, and therefore you must come to your senses and be able to relate with that aspect of yourself. As a child, we haven't yet formed cognitive functioning or emotional literacy and self-reflective capacity required to identify our emotional responses to stimuli or develop the capacity to emotionally self-regulate. The relationship with the inner child is not simply the relationship with your childhood self, but it is rather a present sense relationship in the here and now with the childlike aspect of yourself. Although this relationship differs from the childhood self, they are related, and the formation of your current relationship with this aspect of yourself may require the re-examination, reorientation, and resolution of events that have occurred in the past throughout childhood. Most people develop psychological defense strategies in an attempt to protect this vulnerable child. And if left unchecked, these previously helpful defense strategies that perhaps ensured survival throughout earlier development can cause chronic problems later in life, particularly within our relationships. Many models of psychotherapy are essentially what might be recognized as a process of reparenting, with the therapist providing the safe base of a secure caregiver in the relationship that offers trust, responsiveness, empathy, support, and care, qualities that permit the client to feel safe to meet the vulnerable child and allow the expression of painful feelings and unmet needs. These characteristics embodied within the therapeutic relationship are those that were not perhaps provided in a consistent manner within the first primary caregiver relationship, leading to a distorted perception of the self. Working with a trained therapist can assist the development of a more secure attachment style and the development of a healthier self-image. The different parenting styles that influence the attachment models consist of those identified by family counsellors that are generally divided into three categories. The first being an authoritarian style, which is one where the parents know best approach and they emphasize obedience. The second is the permissive style that provides few behavioral guidelines because parents don't want to upset their children. And then there's the authoritative style, which blends a caring tone with structure, boundaries, and consistency. These three styles of parenting essentially determine whether the child can develop a secure relationship, learning trust or distrust of relationships. Generally, it's the third style of the authoritative approach that is viewed as that which best allows for the healthy development of self-image. In future presentations, I'll expand more on the effects of these styles of parenting and the effects that they have on the development of the attachment models, as well as the development of the inner child relationship as a means of recovery from childhood trauma. If you like what's been shared in this presentation and wish to continue journeying with more episodes of Future Self Dreaming, please hit the subscribe button. Information about booking counselling sessions and workshops can be found via the website futureselfdreaming.com, and you can follow Future Self Dreaming on Instagram and Facebook as well as on YouTube. Thank you, in Lakesh.